How does a family collapse after one text message and a single like? At 12:09 a.m., I stopped every automatic payment I had quietly carried for years. By morning, the people who erased me from their family were begging systems, banks, and creditors to forgive what they had just lost. But before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? The message came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was sitting at my editing desk, trimming footage for a corporate client, the kind of work that pays bills but never makes you proud. My phone vibrated once, then twice. I ignored it. Deadlines don't care about interruptions. When I finally looked, my father's name glowed on the screen. Julian, your mother and I have decided it's time for you to stop treating this family like a backup plan. You've made your choices. We're done supporting your lack of direction. Don't contact us again unless you're ready to grow up. I read it 3 times. Each time the words felt heavier. Below his message, my brother Ethan had reacted with a thumbs-up emoji, not a comment, not a question, just that single casual gesture of approval. I set the phone down and stared at my monitor. The timeline blinked. The client's logo spun in a loop. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. I just sat there, feeling nothing and everything at once. Lack of direction. I wanted to laugh. I worked 2 jobs. I paid my rent on time. I never asked for anything. But none of that mattered to them. To Harold Corvin, success meant owning something. To Ethan, it meant not working as hard as I did. I opened my banking app. The screen loaded slowly, showing accounts, balances, and scheduled transactions. I scrolled through the list, my thumb moving automatically until I reached the recurring payments section. Mortgage assistance, utility autopay, car insurance, credit card minimum, grocery store subscription, all tied to my parents' accounts, all set to process automatically, all invisible to them until the money stopped moving. A notification popped up at the bottom of the screen. Scheduled payment reminder, 12:09 a.m. I stared at it for a long moment. The cursor blinked. The reminder pulsed gently. I could feel the weight of 6 years pressing against my chest. Every phone call, every favor, every quiet sacrifice that disappeared into the void of their expectations. I closed the app. I didn't delete anything. I didn't change anything. Not yet. I went back to editing. The footage played. The music swelled. The logo spun. I finished the project at 12:03 a.m., exported the file, and sent it to the client. Then I sat in the darkness of my apartment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic below. My phone lay face up on the desk, the screen dark, the message still there, waiting. I picked it up and read my father's words one more time. Don't contact us again unless you're ready to grow up. I set the phone down and opened my banking app again. I didn't become the invisible foundation overnight. It happened slowly, one favor at a time, one emergency at a time, until helping my parents became a routine I never questioned. It started 6 years ago. I was 29, working as a window installer and picking up freelance editing gigs on weekends. My father called me one Saturday morning, his voice tight with stress. "Julian, I need a favor." He always started that way. Never hello, never how are you, just the favor, waiting at the front of the sentence like a debt I already owed. "What's going on?" I asked. "Business accounts running dry. Vendors need payments by Monday, and the bank's giving me runaround fees. Can you cover $2,000 until the next deposit clears?" I said yes. I always said yes. 2 weeks later, he asked for $3,000, then $5,000. Then it wasn't requests anymore. It was just understood. If Harold needed money, Julian would handle it. My mother never asked directly. She hinted. She worried aloud. She mentioned bills in passing, her voice carrying that specific tone that meant she expected me to offer a solution. So I did. Ethan never contributed. When I brought it up once, my father waved it off. "Your brother's still figuring things out," he said. "You've always been the dependable one. He needs time." Ethan was 31 at the time. The dining room table became the place where my sacrifices were swallowed whole. Family dinners always ended the same way. My parents thanked me for being reliable. Ethan made jokes about me having no social life. Marla smiled and poured more coffee. "You're so good with money," she'd say. "We don't know what we'd do without you." I'd nod and finish my meal in silence. I remember one particular dinner 3 years ago. My father had just closed a deal that saved his business from bankruptcy. He was celebrating, pouring expensive wine, talking about expansion plans and new opportunities. Ethan sat across from me, scrolling through his phone, barely paying attention. "Julian made this possible," my father said, raising his glass. "If he hadn't covered those vendor payments last month, we'd have lost everything." Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone smiled. No one mentioned that I'd been covering those payments for 18 months straight. After dinner, I helped my mother clear the table. She touched my arm gently, her eyes warm with gratitude. "You're such a good son," she said. "Your father works so hard. It's nice to know he has someone he can count on." I nodded and carried the plates to the kitchen. That night, I drove home and calculated how much I'd spent. $23,000 over 2 years, nearly a third of my income. Money that could have gone toward a better apartment, a newer truck, a vacation I'd been postponing since I was 25. Instead, it disappeared into their accounts, unnoticed, unrecorded, and unreturned. At work, my coworkers noticed. Caleb, a guy I'd been installing windows with for years, asked me one afternoon why I never took vacations. "Can't afford it," I said. He frowned. "You work more than anyone here. Where's it all going?" I didn't answer. He didn't push, but I saw the way he looked at me after that, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't have all the pieces for. That night, I sat at my editing desk and counted the hours. 40 at the installation company, 20 on freelance projects, the rest spent managing payments, fielding calls, and solving problems that weren't mine. I thought about telling my parents to stop. I thought about cutting them off. But every time I got close, I remembered the way my father looked at me when I said yes. Proud, grateful, like I finally mattered. So I kept going. The apartment was quiet. No television, no music, just the hum of my laptop and the occasional car passing outside. I sat cross-legged on the floor, my phone in one hand and a notepad in the other. I opened the banking app and went through every recurring payment linked to my parents' accounts. Mortgage assistance, $400 monthly, utility autopay, $150, car insurance, $200, credit card minimum, $300, grocery subscription, $75, phone plan, $80, home repair fund, $200, medical copay autopay, $90, streaming services, $45, gym membership, $60, internet service, $70, property tax assistance, $350. The list went on, 14 entries total. Some I'd set up years ago, some I didn't even remember authorizing. I did the math. Over $2,000 per month, nearly $25,000 per year, none of it legally required. I took screenshots, every transaction, every date, every amount. I saved them in a folder labeled Records and backed it up twice. Then I created a spreadsheet documenting every payment I'd made since the beginning. The dates, the amounts, the reasons my father had given, the promises to pay me back that never materialized. The spreadsheet filled 3 pages. The total at the bottom made my stomach turn. $96,400. 6 years of quiet support. 6 years of being dependable. 6 years of hearing, "We don't know what we'd do without you," while watching Ethan post vacation photos from beaches I'd never seen. I closed the spreadsheet and opened my calendar. I scheduled a meeting with an accountant. Not someone my father knew. Someone neutral. Someone who wouldn't try to fix things or offer emotional advice. I needed facts. The next morning, I drove to work in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the sound of tires on asphalt and my own thoughts cycling through the same question. What happens when you stop absorbing damage? At the job site, I installed windows with the same precision I always had. Measure twice, cut once, seal tight. The work was meditative, requiring focus but not thought. My hands moved automatically, guided by years of repetition. Caleb worked beside me, making small talk about football and weekend plans. I nodded along but didn't contribute much. During lunch, I sat in my truck and stared at my phone. The family group chat was still open. My father's message sat at the top, unread by no one, uncommented by everyone except Ethan. A new text appeared. It was from Marla. "Julian, I know your father can be harsh sometimes, but we're still family. Let's not let this get out of hand." I stared at the message. The words felt rehearsed, like she'd spent time crafting them to sound gentle without actually addressing anything. She didn't mention the text my father sent. She didn't acknowledge Ethan's reaction. She just wanted things to go back to normal. Normal meant me paying. I didn't respond. Another message appeared an hour later, this time from Ethan. "Dude, seriously? You're going to ignore Mom now? Grow up!" I saved a screenshot and turned my phone face down. That evening, I went to my second job. The client wanted a promotional video for a real estate company. I spent 3 hours cutting footage of empty houses and scripted testimonials. The work was mindless, repetitive, and exactly what I needed. At 10:30 p.m., I got an email notification. Appointment confirmed. Renee Fowler, CPA, Thursday, 2 p.m. I closed my laptop and went to bed. Renee Fowler's office smelled like coffee and printer toner. The walls were beige, the furniture minimal, and the woman behind the desk radiated efficiency. She didn't smile when I walked in. She just gestured to a chair and opened a laptop. "Tell me what you need," she said. I handed her my phone. "I want to understand what happens if I stop making these payments." She scrolled through the screenshots without reacting. Her face stayed neutral, her fingers tapping the trackpad in quick, deliberate motions. After a minute, she looked up. "Are these people related to you?" "My parents." "Are you a co-signer on any of these accounts?" "No." "Do you have any legal obligation to maintain these payments?" "No." She leaned back in her chair and folded her hands. "Then you can stop them whenever you want. The accounts will default, late fees will accumulate, credit scores will drop, but none of that affects you directly." I nodded slowly. "What happens to them?" "Depends on how long it takes them to catch up. Mortgage assistance might trigger foreclosure proceedings if they miss 3 months. Utilities get shut off after 60 days. Credit cards go to collections. Car insurance lapses, which means they can't legally drive. Property taxes accrue penalties. Medical billing goes to collections if copays aren't met." "How fast does it happen?" "Immediately. Once a payment's missed, the clock starts. Systems don't wait. They don't care about explanations or intentions. They just process what's in front of them." She opened a document on her laptop and turned the screen toward me. "This is a timeline of what you can expect. Day 1, automated reminders start. Day 7, late fees apply. Day 14, services begin suspension warnings. Day 30, credit reporting begins. Day 60, collections notices start arriving. Day 90, legal proceedings become possible." I studied the timeline. Each milestone was marked in red, each consequence listed in plain language. "Can they reverse it?" I asked. "Only if they cover the missed payments plus penalties, but if they've been depending on your support for this long, they probably don't have reserves." "What if they try to claim fraud?" "Do you have records of authorization?" I showed her the spreadsheet. She scrolled through it, her expression unchanging. "This is thorough. If anyone questions the cancellations, this proves you had legitimate access and a history of voluntary support. No fraud." She closed the document and looked at me directly. "I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I will tell you this. Financial dependency creates a specific kind of relationship. It's one-sided. It's invisible to the people benefiting from it. And it doesn't end until someone forces it to end. I thanked her and left. On the drive home, I stopped at a grocery store to pick up coffee. The parking lot was nearly empty. I walked toward the entrance and saw my father's car parked near the front. Inside, I found him at the checkout counter. His card declined twice before he switched to cash. The cashier apologized. My father muttered something about fraud alerts and stormed out. I stayed in the coffee aisle until he was gone, watching through the shelves as he loaded groceries into his trunk. His movements were stiff, frustrated. He didn't look like a man who'd just received a minor inconvenience. He looked like someone whose foundation was starting to crack. That night, I heard my mother on the phone through the thin walls of my apartment building. She lived 2 floors below me, staying temporarily while their house got some repairs done. Her voice carried frustration, repeating the same phrases over and over. "Yes, I understand there's a balance. Yes, I know the due date. Can't you extend it just this once?" I put in headphones and went back to editing. The next morning, Ethan posted on social media. "Funny how some people act like they're heroes for doing the bare minimum. Real adults don't need participation trophies." The post had 15 likes. I saved a screenshot and added it to my records folder. The days that followed felt strangely normal. I went to work. I edited footage. I ignored messages. My father called twice. My mother called 6 times. Ethan sent a string of texts that ranged from confused to angry. I didn't respond to any of them. At the installation site, Caleb noticed the change immediately. "You seem different," he said, adjusting a window frame. "Different how?" "Lighter, like you're not carrying something heavy anymore." I thought about that. He wasn't wrong. For the first time in years, I wasn't mentally calculating bills while working. I wasn't wondering which account would need topping off next. I wasn't preparing for the next emergency call. "I made a decision," I said. "Good decision?" "Time will tell." He nodded and didn't press further. That evening, I received an email from my bank. It was a routine notice about upcoming scheduled payments. I opened it and scanned the list. Every entry tied to my parents was still active, still set to process at 12:09 a.m. in 3 days. I stared at the screen for a long time. This was the moment. The point where theoretical planning became concrete action. I could cancel everything now, or I could let the payments process one more time and delay the inevitable. I thought about my father's message. The casual dismissal. The lack of acknowledgement for everything I'd done. The way Ethan had endorsed it with a single, thoughtless gesture. I thought about 6 years of being dependable, 6 years of quiet sacrifice, 6 years of hearing, "We don't know what we'd do without you," while being treated like a backup plan. I opened the banking app and navigated to the scheduled payments section. 14 entries, all tied to my parents, all set to process in 72 hours. I didn't cancel them. Not yet. Instead, I created a new document, a detailed record of every conversation where my father had asked for help, every promise to pay me back, every time I'd been told this was temporary, every time my mother had hinted at bills she couldn't cover, every time Ethan had been excused from contributing. The document filled 8 pages. I saved it with the rest of my records and sent a copy to my personal email. Then I went to the ATM down the street and withdrew $20. The machine beeped, the receipt printed. My balance showed normal activity. Everything was fine. I walked back to my apartment, climbed into bed, and stared at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind kept returning to the same question. What happens next? At 11:54 p.m. on Friday, 3 days after my father's message, I sat at my desk with my laptop open and my phone beside me. The apartment was dark except for the screen's glow. Outside, the city hummed with distant traffic and muted voices. I opened my banking app and navigated to the scheduled payments section. 14 entries, all tied to my parents, all set to process in 15 minutes. I selected the first one, mortgage assistance, $400, scheduled for 12:09 a.m. I clicked cancel. A confirmation screen appeared. Are you sure you want to cancel this payment? I clicked yes. The entry disappeared. I moved to the next one, utility autopay, $150, cancel, confirm, gone, car insurance, credit card minimum, grocery subscription, phone plan, home repair fund, medical copay, streaming services, gym membership, internet service, property tax assistance. One by one, I dismantled the structure I'd built without ever meaning to. Each cancellation felt like removing a brick from a wall I'd been holding up alone. Each confirmation screen was a small, quiet declaration of independence. By 12:03 a.m., the list was empty. I took screenshots of every confirmation, timestamps, transaction IDs, cancellation notices. I saved them all in the same folder as before. Then I leaned back in my chair and waited. At 12:11 a.m., my phone started ringing. I didn't answer. By 12:15 a.m., there were 6 missed calls. By 12:20, 12. By 12:30, the voicemails started piling up. I turned the phone face down and went back to my computer. I opened my freelance editing software and started working on a new project. The footage played. The timeline filled. The work continued. At 1 a.m., the calls stopped. At 6 a.m., I woke up to 43 missed calls, 22 voicemails, and 37 text messages. I read none of them. I showered, dressed, and went to work. The installation site was a new office building downtown. Caleb and I spent the morning fitting windows on the 3rd floor, the city spread out below us through the empty frames. The work was precise, demanding, and exactly what I needed. At lunch, I checked my phone. The messages had continued through the morning. Most were from my mother, her tone shifting from confused to worried to desperate. Julian, please call me. Something's wrong with the accounts. Julian, the mortgage payment didn't go through. The bank is asking questions. Julian, your father is furious. Please talk to us. I deleted them without responding. Ethan's messages were different, angry, accusatory. What did you do? You're really going to screw us like this? This is pathetic. Call Dad. I saved screenshots and deleted those too. My father sent only one message. We need to talk, now. I turned off my phone and finished my shift. That evening, I went to my editing desk and opened my email. There was a new message from Renee Fowler. Per your request, I've compiled a formal summary of the financial support you provided. Document attached. Let me know if you need anything else. I opened the attachment. It was a professional breakdown of every payment, every transaction, every dollar I'd contributed over 6 years. The document included dates, amounts, and a running total. At the bottom, in bold text, was the final number, $96,400. I printed 3 copies, one for my records, one for my safety deposit box, one for later. Over the next 2 days, the calls continued. My parents left voicemails that ranged from confusion to anger to pleading. My mother cried in one message. My father demanded explanations in another. Ethan sent a string of texts calling me selfish, immature, and vindictive. I ignored all of them. On Tuesday morning, I received a letter from my bank. It was addressed to me but referenced my parents' accounts. The letter explained that multiple automatic payments had been canceled and that the account holders had requested information about the cancellations. The letter confirmed that all cancellations were authorized and processed correctly. I filed it with my other records. On Wednesday, I got an email from my father. Julian, I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, but this needs to stop. We can't cover everything at once. You're putting us in a terrible position. Call me so we can work this out. I didn't respond. On Thursday, my mother showed up at my apartment. I heard her knocking, her voice muffled through the door. Julian, please, I know you're upset. Let's just talk. I sat at my desk and continued working. She knocked for 10 minutes before leaving. That night, I received an email from the credit union where my parents held their primary accounts. The subject line read, "Request for meeting, account review." The email explained that due to recent changes in account activity and multiple missed payments, the bank was requesting a meeting with all parties involved to clarify responsibilities and discuss options. The meeting was scheduled for Monday at 2 p.m. I accepted the invitation. The weekend passed slowly. I worked a double shift on Saturday, installing windows at a residential complex across town. The work was exhausting, physically demanding, and kept my mind occupied. Caleb worked beside me, occasionally asking if I was okay. I told him I was fine. On Sunday, I stayed in my apartment. I organized my records, reviewed my documents, and prepared for the meeting. I printed additional copies of everything: the spreadsheet, the screenshots, Renee Fowler's formal summary, the bank's confirmation letter, the text messages from my family. I arranged them in a folder, each document labeled and dated. That evening, my mother called again. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was brief. "Julian, please come to the meeting on Monday. We need to fix this together." I deleted it. At 1:45 p.m. on Monday, I arrived at the credit union. The building was modern, all glass and steel, with a lobby that smelled faintly of air freshener and paper. I checked in at the front desk and was directed to a conference room on the second floor. My parents were already there. My father sat with his arms crossed, his face set in a hard expression. My mother looked tired, her eyes red. Ethan stood near the window, scrolling through his phone. No one spoke when I entered. I took a seat at the far end of the table and set my folder in front of me. At 2 p.m., the bank officer arrived. Her name was Diane. She was in her mid-40s with short hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She carried a tablet and a folder of her own. "Thank you all for coming," she said, sitting at the head of the table. "We're here to discuss recent account activity and clarify financial responsibilities moving forward." Harold leaned forward. "This is a mistake. Someone hacked the accounts. We need this fixed immediately." Diane opened her tablet and scrolled through something. "Mr. Corvin, we've reviewed your accounts thoroughly. The cancellations in question were not the result of unauthorized access. All transactions were processed using verified credentials and two-factor authentication." Then someone stole Julian's login information. "The cancellations originated from Julian Corvin's personal banking account. All security protocols were followed. No breach occurred." Harold's eyes snapped to me. "You did this." I didn't respond. Marla's voice was softer. "Julian, why would you—" "Because I was asked to stop treating this family like a backup plan," I said. Silence filled the room. Diane continued. "The payments in question were voluntary contributions. Julian Corvin held no legal obligation to maintain them. The cancellations were procedurally correct and cannot be reversed without his authorization." Ethan finally looked up from his phone. "This is insane. You're really going to sit there and act like you didn't screw us over?" I looked at him. "You liked the message." His face went blank. "The one where Dad told me I had no direction. You gave it a thumbs up, remember?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. Diane tapped her tablet. "According to the records we've reviewed, Julian has contributed significant financial support to your household accounts over the past 6 years. Can you confirm this?" Harold shifted in his chair. "He helped out occasionally. That's what families do." I opened my folder and slid Renee Fowler's summary across the table. $96,400, I said. Over 6 years. Mortgage assistance, utilities, insurance, credit cards, property taxes, medical co-pays, and 12 other recurring expenses. All documented, all confirmed by my accountant. Marla stared at the document. "Julian, we didn't realize—" "Yes, you did," I said. "Every time you called, every time you hinted, every time you said you didn't know what you'd do without me, you knew exactly what you were doing." Harold's jaw tightened. "We never forced you to do anything. You didn't have to. You just expected it." Diane cleared her throat. The purpose of this meeting is to establish clarity moving forward. Julian is under no obligation to resume payments. You will need to make arrangements directly with your creditors. Harold stared at the table. We can't cover all of that at once. Then you'll need to prioritize, Diane said. The bank can provide resources for financial counseling and debt management if needed. This is his fault, Ethan said, pointing at me. He's the one who stopped paying your bills, I said. That's all. You're adults. Handle it. Marla's hands trembled. Julian, please. We're family. No, I said. Family doesn't tell each other to stop contacting them unless they grow up. Family doesn't mock each other online. Family doesn't take $96,000 and pretend it never happened. The room went silent. Diane closed her tablet. If there are no further questions, we're done here. No one spoke. I stood, picked up my folder, and walked to the door. Julian, my mother called. I stopped, but didn't turn around. Please don't do this. I left without responding. The days after the meeting felt surreal. My phone stayed quiet. No calls, no messages, no emergencies. The silence was almost uncomfortable, like the absence of noise after years of constant static. I went to work. I installed Windows. I edited footage. I lived my life without the weight of someone else's problems pressing against my chest. Caleb noticed. You look different, he said one afternoon, securing a window frame. How so? I don't know. Settled. Like you figured something out. I thought about that. Maybe I did. He nodded and didn't push further. At night, I sat at my editing desk and worked on freelance projects. The work came easier now. My mind wasn't split between timelines and due dates and mental calculations of how much I could afford to send next month. I just worked. One evening, I got an email from a potential client. They wanted a promotional video for a tech startup. The budget was higher than usual. I accepted and started planning. For the first time in years, I considered taking a vacation. Nothing extravagant. Maybe a long weekend somewhere quiet, somewhere I could disconnect completely. I started researching cabin rentals. 2 weeks after the meeting, I received a letter in the mail. It was from my parents' mortgage company. The letter explained that their account was 60 days past due and that foreclosure proceedings would begin if payment wasn't received within 30 days. The letter wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to Harold and Marla Corvin. But somehow, it had been delivered to my apartment. I opened it and read it carefully. The amount due was substantial. Not just the missed mortgage assistance, but accumulated late fees, penalties, and interest charges. The total was more than they could cover in a single payment. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. Then I threw it away. That weekend, I went to a hardware store to pick up supplies for a personal project. I was building a bookshelf for my apartment, something I'd been meaning to do for months, but never had time for. While I was browsing the lumber section, I saw my father. He was standing near the paint aisle talking to an employee. His voice carried frustration. He was asking about payment plans for a large order. The employee was explaining that they couldn't extend credit without approval. I watched from a distance as my father argued, his face red, his gestures sharp. Eventually, he gave up and left empty-handed. I bought my lumber and went home. That night, Ethan posted on social media again. Some people will do anything to feel important, even if it means tearing down the people who raised them. The post had 23 likes. I didn't save a screenshot. I didn't need to anymore. 3 weeks after the meeting, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was different this time. Quieter, more resigned. Julian, I know you're angry. I know we hurt you. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I should have said something earlier. I should have stopped your father. I should have made Ethan contribute. I didn't, and that's on me. I hope one day you can forgive us. I listened to the message twice. Then I deleted it. The next morning, I received an email from Diane at the credit union. The subject line read, "Follow-up meeting request." The email explained that my parents had requested another meeting to discuss potential solutions. They were asking if I would be willing to attend. I declined. A month passed, then 2. The calls stopped completely. The messages disappeared. My family group chat remained deleted. My father's number stayed blocked. Life continued. I finished the bookshelf and started working on a desk. I took a 3-day weekend and drove to a cabin in the mountains. I hiked. I read. I slept without setting an alarm. When I returned, I felt lighter than I had in years. At work, Caleb asked about the trip. "How was it?" he said. "Quiet." "Good quiet?" "The best kind," he smiled. "You earned it." I picked up more freelance work. The projects were varied and interesting. A wedding video, a short documentary about local history, a commercial for a small business. The work paid well, and for the first time, I wasn't immediately calculating how much I needed to set aside for someone else. I opened a savings account, then an investment account. I started planning for things I'd only thought about in abstract terms before. A newer truck, a better apartment, maybe even a house someday. One evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "This is Marla. I know you blocked me, but I wanted to reach out. Your father and I are separating. The house is being foreclosed. Ethan moved out last week. I'm staying with a friend. I don't expect you to help. I just thought you should know." I read the message 3 times. I didn't respond. 2 days later, I received another text from the same number. "I understand why you did what you did. I don't agree with it, but I understand. I hope you're doing well." I deleted both messages and blocked the number. 3 months after the meeting, I was finishing an editing project when I got a notification on my phone. It was a tagged post on social media. Someone had mentioned me in a comment thread. I opened it. The post was from Ethan. He was asking friends for recommendations on affordable housing. The comments were sympathetic, offering suggestions and advice. One comment stood out. "What happened, man? I thought your parents had that big house." Ethan's response was brief. "Long story, family stuff, we're figuring it out." Someone else commented. "Didn't your brother help out a lot? Can't he?" Ethan's response was immediate. "He's not involved anymore." I closed the app and went back to work. 4 months after the meeting, I got a call from Caleb. "Hey, you busy tonight?" he asked. "Not particularly, why?" "A few of us are getting together for drinks. You should come." I hesitated. I'd been declining social invitations for years, always too busy, always too tired, always needing to save money. "Yeah," I said. "I'll be there." That night, I sat in a bar with co-workers I'd worked alongside for years but never really gotten to know. We talked about sports, movies, work, and life. We laughed, we joked. We didn't discuss anything heavy. It felt normal. At one point, Caleb leaned over and said, "It's good to see you like this." "Like what?" "Relaxed. You were wound pretty tight for a while there." I nodded. "Yeah, I was. Whatever you did, it worked." I didn't elaborate. 5 months after the meeting, I received a letter from a law firm. The envelope was official, stamped with legal terminology and warnings. I opened it carefully. The letter was a formal notice. My parents were filing for bankruptcy. The letter explained that, as part of the proceedings, all financial relationships would be reviewed. If I had any outstanding claims or documentation of loans, I needed to submit them within 30 days. I pulled out my folder of records. The spreadsheet, the screenshots, Renee Fowler's summary, everything I'd documented over 6 years. I made copies and mailed them to the law firm with a cover letter explaining that the amounts listed were voluntary contributions, not loans, and that I had no expectation of repayment. 2 weeks later, I received a confirmation that my documentation had been received and filed. That was the last communication I had regarding my parents' finances. 6 months after the meeting, I moved into a new apartment. It was bigger, brighter, and in a better part of town. I bought new furniture. I hung pictures on the walls. I made the space my own. I didn't tell my family. 7 months after the meeting, I got a freelance opportunity that changed everything. A documentary filmmaker needed an editor for a feature-length project. The budget was significant, the timeline was flexible, and the work was creatively fulfilling. I accepted. The project took 3 months. When it was finished, the filmmaker offered me a permanent position on his team. Better pay, better hours, better work. I quit my installation job and went full-time as an editor. Caleb took me out for drinks to celebrate. "You finally made it," he said. "Made what?" "Out. You're out of whatever hole you were in." I thought about that. He was right. I was out. 10 months after the meeting, I booked a 2-week vacation to the coast. I stayed in a small rental house overlooking the ocean. I worked on personal projects. I read books I'd been meaning to read for years. I walked along the beach every morning. I didn't think about my family once. When I returned, I felt like a different person. Not because I'd changed dramatically, but because I'd finally stopped carrying weight that was never mine to carry. 1 year after the meeting, I received a letter in the mail. It was handwritten, addressed in my mother's careful script. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single page. "Julian, I'm writing this because I need you to know that I understand now. I understand what we took from you. I understand what we expected without asking. I understand why you left. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking you to come back. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I'm sorry. Mom." I read the letter twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. The credit union conference room looked exactly the same as it had a year ago. Same beige walls, same minimal furniture, same sterile brightness. But this time, there were more people in the room. Diane sat at the head of the table, her tablet open in front of her. My father sat across from me, his face harder, older. My mother sat beside him, her eyes avoiding mine. Ethan stood near the door, arms crossed. But now there were others. A lawyer representing my parents' bankruptcy proceedings, a representative from the mortgage company, a debt counselor. I sat alone on my side of the table, my folder in front of me. Diane started the meeting. "We're here to finalize the review of financial obligations related to the Corvin family accounts. This meeting was requested by the bankruptcy trustee to clarify the nature of support provided by Julian Corvin and determine if any legal claims exist." The lawyer leaned forward. "Mr. Corvin, you provided substantial financial support to your parents over a 6-year period. Can you confirm whether any of these contributions were structured as loans?" "No," I said. "They were voluntary contributions." "Were you ever promised repayment?" "Verbally, yes. In writing, no." "Do you have documentation of these verbal agreements?" I opened my folder and slid copies of text messages across the table. Messages where my father said, "I'll pay you back next month." Messages where my mother said, "This is just temporary." Messages where both of them promised this wouldn't last forever. The lawyer reviewed them silently. "These indicate intent to repay," he said, "but they're not legally binding agreements." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm not claiming they owe me anything." Harold's head snapped up. "Then why are we here?" "Because you filed for bankruptcy and listed me as a creditor," I said. "I'm here to clarify that I'm not. You don't owe me anything. You never did." Marla's voice was small. "Julian, I gave you that money because you asked," I said. "I stopped giving it to you because you told me to stop treating you like a backup plan. Everything after that was your choice." The lawyer made notes on his tablet. "For the record, Mr. Corvin is stating that all financial support was voluntary and that he does not claim any debt owed to him. Is that correct?" "Yes," I said. "And you do not intend to pursue any legal claims for repayment?" "No." The mortgage representative spoke next. "Mr. Corvin, you were making monthly contributions toward your parents' mortgage. Were you aware of the terms of their loan?" "No." Were you aware that your contributions were preventing default? Eventually, yes. Why did you stop? I looked directly at my father. Because I was told to. The room went silent. The mortgage representative continued. Your parents' home is currently in foreclosure. The proceedings will finalize in 30 days unless the full amount past due is paid. That amount is now $47,000, including penalties and fees. Harold's face went pale. Can they negotiate a payment plan? The debt counselor asked. Not at this stage, the representative said. The account has been in default for over 6 months. The lender is proceeding with foreclosure. Ethan finally spoke. This is your fault. I looked at him. How? You stopped paying. You knew what would happen. I stopped paying bills that weren't mine. You're 33 years old. You never contributed a single dollar. Don't talk to me about fault. His face flushed red. Diane tapped her tablet. Mr. Ethan Corvin, according to our records, you have an active checking account with this institution. Your current balance is $900. You've never made contributions to your parents' accounts. Is that correct? Ethan didn't respond. Is that correct? Diane repeated. Yes, he muttered. And you're employed? Yes. Full-time? Yes. Diane made a note. Thank you. The lawyer closed his folder. Based on this review, there are no outstanding legal claims between Julian Corvin and Harold and Marla Corvin. The bankruptcy proceedings will continue without his involvement. This meeting is concluded. No one moved. I stood and picked up my folder. Wait, my mother said. Julian, please, isn't there anything? No, I said. We're losing the house. I know. You could help us. You have the means now. I've seen your social media. You're doing well. I stared at her. You want me to help? We're family. You told me to stop treating you like a backup plan. I did. That's all. Harold finally spoke. You're really going to let us lose everything? I'm not letting you do anything, I said. You did this yourselves. I just stopped cleaning up after you. I walked to the door. Julian, my father called. I turned. He looked smaller than I remembered, older, tired. I was wrong, he said. About what I said. You were never without direction. You were holding us up and I couldn't see it. I nodded once. Does that change anything? He asked. No. I opened the door and walked out. Diane followed me into the hallway. Mr. Corvin, she said, I want you to know that what you did was within your rights. You don't owe them anything. I know, I said. Do you feel good about it? I thought about that. Did I feel good? No. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt free. I feel like I can breathe, I said. She nodded. That's enough. I left the building and walked to my truck. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, staring at the steering wheel. Then I started the engine and drove home. That night, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I had a new project waiting, a short film about second chances. The client wanted something emotionally resonant, something that captured the feeling of starting over. I smiled and started working. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, the apartment was quiet. Automatic silence, the best kind.